Hello there. In my last video, I mentioned that I got this new module, Nive Grad, from Noise Engineering, which allows me to use guitar pedals with my modular setup. This is a two-channel sort of level shifter. So you send modular inputs into the input here, and then it reduces the signal by either 12 or 24 dB to go out to something external at a different level. And then you bring that back in, and it brings it back up to by 12 or 24 dB to match the modular levels. So I'm using it for stereo effects pedals. So out to the pedal and back in through the sends of the Zermexa mixer. So last time I did a video with Boss Digital delay I have, this guy over here, but I wanted to get some cool stereo effects and start really experimenting with things that would go well with modular. So I picked up this MOOD MK2. You may have recognized this. It's usually purple, but I got this limited edition one with this very beautiful light bright art. It looks really good. I think this is probably the single nicest looking piece of music gear that I have. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about everything that this does because there are plenty of videos already that do that. So I really just wanted to make a video that was kind of more experimenting with the sounds and kind of seeing what I get. So let me explain what I've got patched up here. We've got 3 voices in this patch. The first one is beads, which is just in wavetable mode. When you don't have anything patched in, it doesn't granularize input. Instead, it just shifts to its own internal wavetables, which I believe match the wavetable mode of Plaits. And so I've just got that going constantly. I'm modulating the wavetable a little bit. I've got that going out into a Mult, and then the raw signal is being sent into the 3rd channel of the mixer. And let me bring that in so you can hear it. So you can hear the quality of the note is kind of changing a little bit, and that's because I'm modulating the time parameter, which is, I think, the row in the table, or essentially just morphing through the table's waves. And then what I'm doing with the other copy of the signal is I'm sending it into the audio input of rings, and this will disable its internal noise burst that it uses to excite the resonator, and it'll use that signal from beads to make a very unusual sound. And then from rings, I'm going out in stereo into the dual Dagger just to cut out a little of the bass resonance so it doesn't get too heavy. And then that's going into in stereo into channel 2 of the Zermexa, and we can bring that in so you can hear what that sounds like. Bring out channel 3. And this is being clocked by the OXI Instruments OXI One. I'm in the stochastic mode, which is kind of like this interesting randomization thing. Let me actually put them all. I'll explain a little bit of this too. So every time this thing triggers a note, it sends a trigger to the strum input of rings, and rings will use that input from beads to resonate. And then finally, I've got Plaits, which is in the wave shaper mode. Let's bring that in. And all the oscillators are tuned to B flat, so they're pretty much just all playing the same note. But I've got a bunch of modulation that's coming from Oct and its expander that's basically affecting all of the different controls on this. So timbre and morphin harmonics on Plaits, brightness, damping, and position on rings, and then beads is just internally modulating with the attenuator randomizer. So then let's bring this out for a second. The output B and the input B over here are the stereo effects send that I'm sending to the MOOD MK2. And I'll explain just very briefly what this does. As I said, there's a lot of videos that go into detail, so I don't want to just do a video manual for this. But basically the idea is that there's 2 effects channels that kind of work in tandem with each other. The left side, these blue controls, and this on-off switch affects the wet channel, which is basically like reverb and time-based effects. And then the right channel is a looper. So you activate this switch to essentially save a buffer of what it's been recording. And then you can change the length of what part of the buffer you're using and various other sort of time-based effects. And then there's 3 modes for each of these. So essentially there's a total of 6 different effects. This is just a dry wet knob. I'm going to leave it on wet, I think, because I'm using it as a send. And then this middle control affects both sides, and this is a clock. So it's the sample rate and the quality of the effect. So as you lower the clock, you'll get sort of pitch shifting and also a degradation of the signal as you get lower and lower. So I sort of briefly implied this, but the looper side is always recording when it's disengaged. And when you click this, it will start looping back what it's been recording this whole time. You can also see that this light above the looper side is blinking. Every time it blinks, that's this restart of like the loop buffer. And the lower you go on the clock, the longer the buffer is. So if I go way down here, I think it's something like 30 seconds of record time, and up in the most high fidelity mode at, what is it, 64K, then you can see it blinks pretty fast. You're only getting about a second of audio. But the cool thing is that it keeps the audio in the buffer at the clock rate that you recorded it at. And then when you lock it in and it starts looping, you can change the clock after the fact to get pitch shifting effects, but also to change the quality of the wet channel. So that's what I'm going to do here. I'm going to sort of record a loop at a low setting and then crank it up once it's locked in to play with high fidelity wet effects. As I mentioned, I'm using the stochastic sequencer in the OXI One, and this is something I haven't played with much, but given that I'm going to be very experimental with this, it seemed like a good fit for what I wanted to do here. Again, a brief explanation of this, and honestly, I'm not even an expert at this. I find that the manual is very brief in how it explains what this does. But I've got this in B-flat Dorian as the scale set, and each of these columns represents one of the notes in the scale. You can see the red ones here are showing that those are part of the chromatic scale, but they're not part of B-flat Dorian. So the ones that are kind of in this blue color are the notes that are in the scale. And it's just looping, step after step, and it goes forever. And the vertical columns are whenever it selects a new note, the likelihood that specific note will be selected. So right now I have essentially like 100% chance of the root B flat. And let me bring this in so you can hear it. You can hear it's always playing the same pitch. But if I stick one of these other ones in here, now it's going back and forth between those two. And so you can sort of do relative probabilities of these various pitches. And then there's various controls on this side for these last 4 columns. The rightmost column is how likely it is to select a new rhythm, I think, and then how likely it is to select a new pitch. So at 100%, it's a guaranteed chance you'll get a new rhythm and a new pitch on each step. And then at 0%, you're essentially locking them in so you get a loop of what's been playing before. And then these 2 columns vary the rhythmic divisions and the octaves. So as I go up here, it increases the likelihood that higher notes will come in. And then down here, the likelihood that lower notes will come in. And you can do them both separately, so I can sort of expand the octave range in both directions. So maybe I'll just do 1 down and all the way up. And then this is the same idea for rhythmic divisions, like long versus short. I think because I'm just sending triggers to these modules that have built-in envelopes, this column won't really have much of an effect in this case. I should also mention that the way that this is connected to the modular is via the OXI pipe, which is just this Ethernet cable, or sorry, it's not Ethernet, it's HDMI. And it goes out here into this guy right here, and then the CV and gate outputs are all available right here for easy patching. So that, I think, is the setup. And let's start playing with the pedal and see what we get. So again, here's the raw exciter into rings. And let's bring in beats. I'm going to turn on, let's go down to like 24 o'clock, turn on the reverb. So at this point, we're just hearing rings. We're not hearing plaits yet. So the time control here affects the tail and the size of the reverb. And you get a little bit of that smoothing sound as you change the time while it's playing. And then this modify control is similar to the dense control, if you're familiar with Desmodus Versio. On the right side, it smears the sort of delay taps into a reverb, and then as you go left, the individual repeats that make up the reverb are easier to hear. So it's a little bit more similar to sort of a slapback delay. I think the reverb sounds really nice. Okay, so let's remember that while the micro looper is disengaged, it's always recording. But as soon as I click this, it's going to start repeating. So let's maybe wait for something with a little bit more brightness to it. Of course, I put these very slow LFOs on it, so it's going to take a long time to come back around. Okay, maybe that's good enough. Now, if I take out the incoming input, what we're hearing now is what's actually stuck in the buffer. I think it's a little too low. I might try to re-loop that. So take out the input. Now we're hearing the buffer. This might work. Let me turn the clock rate up. You hear how as I increase the clock rate, it sort of went up an octave. So I'm using the tape mode on the micro looper side. In this one, the modify control is sort of like the speed that it plays the loop back. So I've got it to the right of noon is it plays it forwards, and to the left of noon it plays it backwards, and then the more you turn it towards the extremes, the faster it goes. So I think it's at like half speed here, and there is at normal speed 1.5 maybe 2. So you can hear you get the octave changes as well as like the speed. Maybe we'll keep it at 1, and then length is how much of the loop is actually being looped. So right now this is the full buffer, but I can bring it down. You can hear it starts looping faster until you can essentially get like an oscillator out of it. So let's leave it at max. Maybe let's actually reverse it. Maybe at that slowest speed. And then let's bring back in the wet sound. And then let's bring in plates. Going to mess with the modify to go kind of back and forth between a slapback delay and a reverb. Let's make the tail longer too. messes with the clock a little bit too. You get some pitch shifting and quality changes. It's got a real nice low bassy resonance. I forget if I mentioned this, but you can also change the routing of the wet effect with this middle toggle switch. So right now I have the wet effect only affecting the incoming audio, but I can have it also affect the micro loop. Or just the micro loop. Let's do just the micro loop, and then you can also overdub. If you hold down the right foot switch, it like overlaps the recording of what's already in the buffer without throwing it away. Let's try that a little bit. Let's take these two out and listen to the buffer. That's all the way up. So I've got a really cool texture now as a result of overlapping what was originally in the buffer plus some live stuff on top of it. So beautiful. This pedal is like something where you can't go wrong. Just basically any input and any setting sounds so cool. Bring in a little bit of the raw beads too. It's kind of hard to hear under all that. Let's try a different mode for the micro looper. I'm going to switch to stretch mode. This says time stretching. I think it works the other way, where there's no stretching at the extremes. Yeah, and then as you get closer to center, it stretches more. Length control is like the size of this pitch stretch slices. it gets more grainy towards the bottom. So cool. Let's get a little more variation. Overdub a little bit more. Let's try stretching backwards. Well, that's all about all I wanted to do today. Thanks for coming along with me on this Mood Mark II exploration. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something.